Welcome to the show, folks. This is Wrestling Changed My Life. Here we go.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if they gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Good morning, ladies and gents. You're listening to Wrestling Changed My Life. This is your host, Ryan Warner. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great episode for you today. This one is one of our spotlight episodes where you're not going to know this person's name before this interview, but the story is really powerful. And our guest today is David Katz, who is a rabbi in Israel, of all places. He wrestled in high school for a few years, but then after high school, like a lot of folks, gained a ton of weight, and it was up to 270 pounds, whereas he used to wrestle about 152. And so this podcast is all about how the foundation that Dave has from wrestling helped him shed, essentially 110 pounds. And you cannot believe the before and after pictures. They're incredible. They're inspiring. And so I wanted to get this episode out there. So that's our guest today. Fan of the week goes to Eric Dabbs. That's Dabbs Eric on Twitter, an Oklahoma State fan. Thank you for listening, Eric. We appreciate it. Last but not least, this episode is brought to you by WrestlingChangedMyLife.com. WrestlingChangedMyLife.com. You can find all past episodes there. And that's it, folks. Let's give it up for Dave Katz. Peace!
And I was a typical kid wrestling in Centerville, Ohio. Like I said, growing up, things that were happening in my youth that I didn't really understand until I got older. Like I remember running into Graham Wrestling at a youth tournament, and they killed everybody. And it's like, man, what am I not doing right? Again, I now know these answers now, and that's the point of the story, is learning what the sport was about back then that I didn't know back then. And then you go to the state tournament, St. Edwards and Walsh Jesuit was winning like everything, right? And so I'm trying my best to be a wrestler at 16, not knowing what's going on. There's no internet back in those days, trying to make my weight class and be a normal kid. And I break my arm junior year at a preseason wrestling tournament, and that's when I'm hoping to make my big move and leap and hopefully get a scholarship one day and all those dreams I think we all had when we wrestled. So I break my arm, and I couldn't even rehab. It was hard, and by senior year I just didn't even go back out for the team. Didn't even think about it. I just moved on and made just peace with it, and by then went to college and ended up going to Israel, become a rabbi, and moved on with life. So it was a clean break, never gave it two thoughts, never cared. And I was always like a strong guy in high school and in my early 20s, but when I got to Israel, nutrition and fitness went out the window. And I went to a place called Yeshiva. It's like a Bible academy for Jewish people in Israel. And you study the Bible pretty much all day and night, and you don't do much physical activity. And the weight started to come on pretty heavy. And obviously the food wasn't too good. A lot of like pita and hummus, nothing nutrition. And the weight came. But all the guys I went to school with, a bunch of Jewish people that didn't really have the wrestling background or sports background that I did, because a lot of them come from New York and Chicago. And I was the one guy from Dayton, Ohio, right? And Ohio is massive wrestling. And before that, my family came from Western PA. So that's how I got into wrestling my brother wrestled, I think, at the same school that Mark Angle wrestled at in Mount Lebanon. So it was always in my blood, in my family, everywhere I went. My sister, she ended up going to Cleveland, and so I would go to and stay with her for a lot. And she was up there, Beechwood, all the schools in Cleveland. So, I mean, everywhere I went, it was like wrestling mecca, right? And everyone I met identified me as a wrestler. And I didn't really understand why they did. And I tried to fight it, and I got the sport out of my blood. And I was, made peace with it, and I was kind of against it for a while because I had a lot of, I wouldn't say animosity, but I was kind of upset that I didn't achieve my dreams and goals. And I got negative about it and a little bit bitter. Internally, never really said anything, and just tried to get it out of my blood. But then what was interesting was the internet happened. I think it happened to everybody, right? Because before the internet, I don't think you really had the tools to figure out what the sport was about when you were done, right? When you graduated, you got on with your life, you got a job, and you probably didn't think twice about it. But around 2010, I started getting the itch for wrestling again, wondering what's going on in Ohio, what's Graham up to, and what's all the schools doing now.
Now, can I interrupt you here real quick though? How long? I guess when did you get to Israel? Like, what's the gap in between 2010 and there?
Yeah, so I graduated in '96. Okay. And I got to Israel in 2001.
Okay, so 2001. So '96 on, you don't even wrestling is a closed chapter in your life. You're not thinking about it. And I mean,
right, it's gone. It's like I broke my arm. I'm upset about it. Just changing directions, getting religious. There's no internet, and just moving to Israel, far, far away from Ohio. Probably never think about Ohio again. And got married in 2007. Had a couple of kids, and again around that time, late 2000s. Facebook's coming out, but more importantly, Flow starts coming out. Mm-hmm. And I started following. I was always curious about Graham. I never understood why did I get beat so bad by that school, right? It always stuck out in my head, and people would always say, what's so big about you in wrestling? I would talk about it, and I always assumed that there was nobody else in the world good at wrestling but Graham, right? It was like that Ohio biased attitude, right? Only we were the best. And I would tell people, oh yeah, the schools that I wrestled, they're the only ones that are good. And as the internet got around, I started researching and finding out that there were other schools that were good. I couldn't believe it. It was like disbelief because only Ohio, there's a little bit of brainwashing that only Ohio is good, only Ohio matters, everybody else isn't good. And you see it on Flow back when they had the threads in the forum, right? People would always argue with Ohio guys. And that's where I come from. And so it was shocking to find out that wrestling was bigger than I thought. Like I thought it was just, Ohio. I thought nobody else in the country wrestled. Very ignorant, extremely ignorant. And when Flow started getting big, I was following the Iron Man tournament around Christmas time and following a little bit. It got big around 2012 when the Olympics came around, and now I'm wondering, what's America going to do? Because I knew in the previous couple of Olympics, I got into Beijing a little bit, but wrestling took a downturn. Right, 2004 we didn't do too good, right? In 2008, we had a couple of golds, but nothing great. So I tried to reconnect in 2012, and that's when I started figuring out who Jordan Burroughs was and who was who in the sport and where did America come, how good are we, and trying to figure out what's the scene looking like. But the thing that got me back even onto Flow and all this stuff was in the mid 2000s when I was in the yeshiva, the Bible school. I started getting recurring dreams. And my weight was pretty high, about 250 pounds.
Would you wrestle at high school? Just for reference sake.
So my freshman and sophomore year, I wrestled 119, and then I hit a huge growth spurt and got real strong, and I was going to wrestle 152 my junior year, and then by senior year, when I didn't wrestle, I was about 190.
Okay, so that's your fighting weight, that area. And how high did you get in the mid-2000s?
Yeah, my highest was 270.
Okay, so 270, you're having these, what are the recurring dreams you're having?
So I was, in the school. It's mid-2000s. Remember, I'm done with wrestling, don't care. And I keep getting these recurring dreams that I'm back in Centerville, trying to get on the mat and trying to wrestle 119 or whatever weight it was. And in the dream, I'm telling the monologue, right? But I can't be doing this. I'm not making weight. I'm too heavy. And I was always going back to high school in wrestling, getting on the mat, and it bothered me. And I was asking people, what does this mean if I'm having this recurring dream about wrestling, and it's so far from who I am, and nobody could answer it. I couldn't get answers. It didn't make any sense. It was literally like plaguing me. I mean, it was often, at least once a week for years. So that's where I think the itch came from to when the internet got big, to just start reaching out on YouTube and Flow and watching the videos, trying to find old videos of the state tournament, just innocently grasping at straws. And then around 2013-14, as Flow is growing really, really big, right? Every year they're getting bigger. And I was starting to reconnect to NCAA wrestling. I was becoming a big fan, a really big fan of the sport. And I was getting kind of disillusioned with football and basketball on TV. And wrestling it moved into my number one position of what sport I was following. So that's going on, and I started to get this meditation. The meditation was exactly what you asked. What was it about the 16-year-old kid that chose to walk away from wrestling? Because I knew, looking back as an adult in my mid to late 30s, and now I'm 41, I'm saying to myself, I was strong, I was fast, I loved the sport, had huge dreams and goals, and none of it worked out. And when I broke my arm, I walked away, didn't think twice. What was it that drove me from the sport, right? Why did I choose this path of religion and spirituality, and I gave up? Because the 16-year-old wasn't religious or spiritual, so I had no reason to follow this path. And I seemed to have walked away from a clean break at 16. And so I started really thinking about this. I mean, I don't know why. This overtook me. The recurring dreams and now reconnecting as a fan, and it led me to ask the question. And I made a rule with myself. Don't blame the coach, because I kept seeing in my head I wanted to blame the coach. Don't blame breaking your arm, right? Like the rule was don't point fingers and don't blame. You got to figure this out.
Take ownership.
Right? Like, what's that?
Take ownership, right? That's what Jocko Willink,
That's it.
one of my favorite podcasters, says. Extreme ownership.
Yeah, right, growing up in the 90s, that means in youth wrestling in the 80s, they grew up watching Vision Quest. You know what I mean? That's like the DNA in our blood, and so you have to live it at some point. You got to own it, like you're saying, and just don't point fingers and find the truth, right? You're being plagued by these dreams. You're watching the sport. You're a fan. Figure it out. Make peace with why you walked away from, because it doesn't matter at 35, but it mattered to that 16-year-old kid that had a dream, and why did he walk away? Because that kid didn't know any better, and so I felt that it would be responsible to figure out what happened at that age that I walked away, and yet I'm still plagued by that decision more now than I was then.
Wow!
And it was just kind of like being ultra honest with it, and let your mind craziness just work itself out, because something was pushing me to figure it out, and I didn't want to just discount it as it's stupid. It's just wrestling. Who cares? It was a 16-year-old kid. So now I'm a big fan watching, and Flo has interviews with the wrestlers, after an NCAA match, right? And I'm starting to say, I'm going to learn from these guys. I want to learn about the sport and figure out what I wasn't doing right. I might as well, if I didn't get it then, I might as well now figure it out. And I'm starting to really pay attention, and I'm taking notes, and I'm learning, and I'm trying to figure out what the sport is from a mature, wisdom perspective. So that takes you up to about summer of 2018. Again, that was 2010 through 2017, following the Flow trajectory, and figuring out that there were more schools than just Graham and St. Ed's and just more than Ohio, and even getting into international wrestling, following, and just realizing what the sport really was and is, and not what I thought it was from a 16-year-old point of view, and just really loving the sport and allowing myself to love it. So I get up to 270 pounds, and time to lose weight. I had a bad neck, and the chiropractor that was coming to work on my neck was telling me about nutrition and diet, and he was telling me how to do it. And I got a gym membership, and I started at the gym. Now, in the middle of that story, there was a guy. I was living in a small mountain town in north of Israel called Sfat. And there was a guy who made an ad in the newspaper that he was a national champion freestyle wrestler in America. You can look him up. His name is Gershon Horowitz. He was a senior-level wrestler, 70 years old, and he won the senior nationals at the old man division. And I saw his name on the internet, and I saw his videos. He made an ad. He was living in my town, and he was looking for a wrestling partner. And I wrote to him and said I used to wrestle, so I went on eBay and I bought a pair of wrestling shoes. And we actually, because there's no gym in that little town, so we rented out a gymboree, like a little kid's gymboree, the play zone. And we would close it down and we would wrestle on those mats and we would work out. So because of that, that got my interest flowing. I got the shoes. And I moved out of that town, never used the shoes again, and just that little blip in the radar died out. But so when I started at the gym, I didn't even own a pair of tennis shoes because I haven't done anything physical in 20 years. So all I had was those wrestling shoes from wrestling with Gershon. So I get to the gym, and a friend of mine lives in Iowa. And everyone knows, Iowa, if Ohio's not the best, then it's got to be Iowa, right? So a friend of mine sent me an Iowa wrestling shirt. So I go to the gym, and all I have of a relic of sports gear is an Iowa wrestling shirt. I bought 5X shorts, and I got my wrestling shoes. And so I'm at the gym, starting my diet, and looking like this overweight 270-pound wrestler.
So you're wearing wrestling shoes at the gym, and you haven't done anything since the mid-'90s. Now, what's your diet like leading up to this point? Like, what's your daily food intake?
Yeah, so I mean, at that point, it's just pizza. Like pizza. I lost all control. Pizza, sandwiches. I just gave up. I had no knowledge of it. I don't know anything about food. Just no interest in doing anything. I got very, very good at my work, and just didn't care. And I didn't know to care.
Were you depressed at all? Or were you feeling good still?
No, just good state. Just total ignorance, complete, utter ignorance. And remember, the way the story's going to go is you have to figure out why you weren't good at wrestling. You can't point fingers at the coach or your arm, right? And so the journey starts at the gym. And if people are looking at me like I'm a circus freak, right? Because you get the wrestling shoes on, the Iowa shirt, and just going through the motions at that point. This is June of 18. By July of 18, I found the secret of nutrition. It sounds a little bit hokey, but I was Googling, and I found out if you lose 3,500 calories in a week, which is a 500-calorie deficit a day, that's a pound loss a week. And then you find out every sector of athletics uses that framework, right? Like calories and nutrition, but I didn't know any of this. So when I found that out, I put it to the test, and I started losing weight. So I went from 130 kilos. Within a couple of weeks, I'm down about 118 kilos. It flushed out the system of just the junk, and very soon I'm going to fit into an XL. So I go to the mall, get some Adidas garb, still got the wrestling shoes on, and I go down to like a XL.
What kind of food did you cut out at this time?
So the first thing I did was the chiropractor got me into eating milkshakes. And I'm thinking like back from the day, like putting ice cream and milk in there. He's like, no, man, that's not what we're talking about. Like, you got to use water-based or almond milk, and like it was summertime, right? So over in Israel, summertime, watermelons and cantaloupe are in season. He's like, got to put in watermelon and cantaloupe because those are superfoods, like high volume, low calorie. And he taught me how to make smoothies. I always call it milkshakes. And so they're like, massive amount of food, and it was only like 500 calories. So I'm fasting in the morning and having a shake at lunch, going to the gym in the morning, and then coming back and having a small dinner, keeping the calories down. I was using the Lose It app to monitor calories and nutrition, going to bed around 8:30, and because of the intermittent fasting from 8:30 until the next meal, which was lunch, the weight was pouring off.
I was going to ask you about intermittent fasting because that's something I'm fascinated by.
Like I was just using every tool that exists. But the thing is I was using the wrestling framework because it's all I knew.
Yeah.
All I knew was how to work hard in wrestling, right? That's the point of the story, is I may have sucked at wrestling. That's fine. But the wrestling practice that I went through, the grueling practices and the skills learned, like the podcast is called Wrestling Changed My Life, it did. It taught me what hard work is, how to push your wall back, how to break yourself, and that's how I did it. Because, that much out of shape, I had to push through no matter what. I wasn't going to have a setback. Now, the thing is, my work was really stressful at that time. And what got me in the gym was I had a dream, not a literal dream. This was like just an idea of a jacuzzi and a sauna. I wanted to just like rest my body just from being so overweight, stressed out. And now that the weight loss came into that, when I first wanted to do that, it wasn't about weight loss. It was just about getting relaxed. So now that it's weight loss, I'm thinking, all right, you know what? Let's use the sauna to lose weight, like back in the wrestling days. Because back in the high school, I'd have a plastic suit on, rubber suit,
right,
and listen to my Metallica tape and my Walkman, right? And cut weight, and that's all I knew. And so I'm saying, like, if you're, they say, I teach students in Texas, and they always say, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. So I thought, if you're going to do this, man, just do it. So I get into the sauna. I'm wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and I go in there. Now I got an iPod with Bluetooth and Bluetooth headphones. And, I'm like revisiting my past, and I'm taking a book in there to read. And people are looking at me like, what is this freakazoid doing in here? Right? This is just a gym in Israel. Like, first of all, they've never seen a wrestler. Second of all, they've never seen a wrestler cutting weight. But that's all I know. So I'm thinking, like, take the iPod in there, get your 20 minutes on it, take a book to pass the time, and turn it into a study session in the sauna while you're sweating the weight off. So, I have like a session of cardio, which, again, one of the wrestling rules that I learned from my research and watching, which I refused to do as a kid, was run. Right? I always say, like, why do you have to run as a wrestler? So now when I'm losing weight, I realize what it is. It's that you don't want to do it. Every day you give yourself a reason and an excuse to not do cardio. And I always wanted to skip out on running as wrestling. So now I'm saying you're not allowed to get off the bike. 30 minutes on a recumbent bike and watching YouTube. All right, it's not exactly like in high school with YouTube, but the same point is that you make yourself do the 30 minutes non-negotiable. And then you put in 30 minutes to an hour in the weight room, and then another 30 minutes of pool session, sauna, steam room, jacuzzi, and swimming stuff. Because I used to wrestle freestyle. I was actually better freestyle than collegiate. And we used to do our throws in the swimming pool. So, using, if I'm going to be in the pool, I'm not a very good swimmer, but I thought, do, like, just motion. Like, get your body, like, aerobically working out in the pool. So I'm just using every tool possible from wrestling that I learned in those years that ended by 16, and it's starting to get the weight pouring off.
So we're at a crucial point of the story, right? So July hits, you're shedding some pounds, you're seeing some noticeable changes, but what, again, was the turning point to get you there in the month before, June of 2018? What was, like, the...
Yeah, I don't know. I went on tour in America for my work, and I knew I wanted to get in the jacuzzi and the sauna to relax. Somehow on that tour, I got in my head that if I'm going to be at the gym anyways, I might as well use the gym. I don't really remember. And then the chiropractor got me on the milkshakes. So my diet changed. I'm ready to go to the gym. I sign up, and I bought athletic gear, just like shorts and shirts in Texas, and a gym bag. And like I said, I had the wrestling shoes already, but and the Iowa shirt. But I don't know. Somehow it clicked that I was going to give it a go.
I was going to say, I love that you wear wrestling shoes in the gym. I've done that before, and it just makes you, it looks ridiculous, but you feel good when you're in there wearing them. You feel like
when the story ends, I'm gonna hit that point when we end the story here in a minute, because that's the whole crux of it. So now, so I'm losing about 10 kilos a month, right? So figure by July, you're already down about 118, and August, you're hitting about 100, and in September, you're around 90. November, you're down around 80, and around December, I'm going to reach my goal, which I didn't really have a goal in mind. The goal was just to get it all off. So by December, I'm down to about 75 kilos, and come February, March.
65 pounds. Oh my God! So you went from 270 to 165 in 6 months.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The wrestling mentality works. That's the point. Like, I really did it. And the point is, quit, don't be a liar, and don't be, like, pointing fingers. If you say you wanted to wrestle, and you say you were a wrestler, and you think you really had a shot, and you think you were really good, based on what? What do you have to show for it? I mean, it's just a kid's dream. You believe it, and you lived it. So I'm saying, then live it out, right? You learned how to do it. You had the skills and tools, so do it. So I did, and it worked. It just, you got your mindset back, and the mindset was, just do the things that were really real back when you were 16. Like, go through the wall and push yourself, and all those little isms that we learned Put them to the test because they change your life. And so I actually got down my lowest. I decided I wanted to see the number 6. Like I said, I got down to sub 100, then, the 9, the 8, the 7. So my lowest I got down was 69 kilos, 152 pounds. I got down there. So now that I'm down there, and I'm like seeing myself for the first time at this in the mirror since I literally was like 16. Because when I broke my arm, I was 152, and I was trying to cut weight and make 145, and I couldn't make it. So it turns out the secret that was elusive. Why did I suck at wrestling, so to speak? Why did I quit? I didn't understand diet and nutrition. Like all the kids that were good, I'm imagining they understood these little things that I didn't have. Tom Ryan, the coach of Ohio State, said, like, if you didn't have the dad that showed you like the Russian national team, like you didn't have those options. I remember, I don't know, do you know the Dernlin family?
Yeah, I don't know them, but I know the name.
So my coach one time took us to Dernlin's garage, and we wrestled in the garage. And it's like, and I ducked out. I didn't wrestle Tim Dernlin. I didn't want to lose. I wrestled other guys. And as I grew up, I'm like, why didn't I step on and go with them? Like, what if I would have won? Why didn't I give myself the chance? And it really burned me that I had the opportunity. Okay, I was around like a great area of wrestling. All the opportunities were there, and I didn't take any of them. And it was, every single time it was elusive. And again, I didn't want to point fingers and blame. So like the struggle in me was like it was real. Like I really was there, legit around greatness of the sport, and I always ducked out and missed. And it was always subtle. It was never like just like a overt thing. And that's what plagued my mind for all those years was I was so close to even discovering, like in wrestling, they say, like step on the mat and find out. Just find out. And I never wanted to find out. So here I got put everything on the table and I found out that, yeah, it was in me. All those things really were there. I was missing the things like at 10 years old I wasn't trained right. But it doesn't mean you can't use it when you're 40. You know what I'm saying? Like when these kids start out at 10, they have the tools and the diet, nutrition, and how to train their bodies. I didn't have that. But we're not blaming. It's just a matter of that you can apply it and implement it now, and it works. And so the weight comes off, and now here's the funny part of the story. So my kid wants to get into wrestling, and I was starting to think about, should I get him involved, and should I get like some shoes off of eBay? And I find out there's a wrestling club in a city called Lod. And in Israel has wrestling now. I don't know if you've seen on the news, but like sometimes the American guys or whatever will wrestle an Israeli wrestler. I don't know their names, but Israel is in the international scene. And it's because the Russians are big in Israel. A lot of Russians made, they call it Aliyah. They became citizens of Israel. So I go to this club, it's called in Lod, and I want to step on the mat. I got the shoes. I'm going to find out if I really have it in me or not, right? I decided I'm going to go for it. So I get over there, and I'm thinking like, I'm awesome, right? I'm down 152 pounds. I'm strong at the gym. I'm just about probably stronger than I ever was in high school because in wrestling they talk about dad strength. So now I'm getting the dad strength going on, and wrestling is feeding into dad strength, and it's a whole new level. Like it's always funny. Like you tell people like, a dad's got one match in him, right? A dad is so much stronger than a kid. He can win one go, right? He'll get hurt doing it, but he got one go in him. And I thought, if I have one more in me, I'm going to find out. So I go to the club, and the head of the club's name is Vladimir. And he looks like a hammer, but I forget the concept that it's not about how big your biceps are just to be like wrestling strong. So I'm thinking like I'm going to nail this guy. I'm going to totally just destroy this guy. Like I'm psyching myself up, right? Because like American pride, Ohio pride, and the Russians are nothing. And so at the end of the practice, he just said, "You want to wrestle?" And I'm like, "Well, that's why I'm here. I'm here to show you who's boss, right?" And so we get on the mat, and I think he probably was bigger than me a little bit. I think I look at his pictures on Facebook. He's probably a good 80, 85 kilos. But again, no excuses. I don't know that for sure. But he just hammers me really hard, and I get sore ribs walking away from there. And I didn't go back. And I found out a lot of things on that day. Number one, I achieved my dream of getting back on the mat at the exact same weight where it all ended. So I went full circle, right? The weight loss, wrestling, and if you're not going to like go full circle and step on the mat and complete the circle and the vision, then what's the point? And when I got there, and I was horrible against Vladimir. Right? Also, he's probably about 45 years old also. But you're so out of shape, and I didn't have the basic tools that he had. I think he took actually silver in Russian cadets. Imagine that, right? This is the Russian cadet silver. But he had it like ingrained in him. I stopped at 16, and I never really got the training even to have like muscle memory. So the lesson was that reality is struck. I did quit at 16. I don't have it in me, and the fact is I don't like getting my ribs busted. I don't like bloody noses, and I didn't like it then. So part of the truth was I didn't know what fitness was. I didn't know what nutrition was. I didn't know how to properly cut weight. I was cutting weight in the sauna, but probably eating like a bowl of ice cream the night before. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the discipline involved, and I don't have the body type to handle that kind of physicality. And I realized if I would have, I probably would have stuck with it. And so the guy Vladimir taught me valuable lessons about why I did move on and why I ultimately didn't like the sport at 16. It's not that I didn't like it. It's that I wasn't cut out for like the competition of going to battle and blood, and it's not me. But so much of the sport is me. That wasn't that. And I don't think, so many people don't make it, right? So many guys are not going to make the sport. And so what do? Do you throw it away just because you didn't make it? Very, very, very few are going to make it. And so what do you do with that experience? I mean, do you just forget about it? Do you shove it out of your life? Do you follow as a fan? Do you go into coaching? Do you get your kids involved? And I guess the path that I took was own it and live it out. And so now with my weight down in under 6 months, and now I'm keeping the weight off, and I'm living the lifestyle of a wrestler. And it's working. And I'm actually, as I go to the gym, I'm trying to incorporate as much wrestling as possible. And I want to keep it in my blood flowing. And I'm realizing, wrestling for me is the truth. So I stopped wearing shorts, and now I wear sweatpants. Another thing I didn't do in high school. I stopped wearing T-shirts and wearing sweatshirts because I'm thinking if you're not going to sweat and work hard, then what are you doing? And these are all the things I wanted to skip out on as a kid, and I didn't know the difference. And so then I said to myself, you still got those wrestling shoes. So why not just wear the wrestling shoes? And I tried it, and I thought, man, it's even more comfortable wearing the wrestling shoes than tennis shoes. So now at the gym, I'm walking around in sweatshirts, sweatpants, totally soaked in sweat when I'm done working out, and wrestling shoes on. Now, I'm not going to wear headgear. That'd be a little extreme. But the thing is, the mindset works. It really does work. And that's what I put to the test every single day. I still do the sauna routine. I still go in there with the iPod and the Bluetooth and the music going and wrestling mentality, like the music and the intensity. Because I think for me, it's that intensity that I learned that I always did have that got me through this. And that is how wrestling changed my life. And it's how I nurture my dad's strength. I mean, it keeps me strong. And I'm probably a much better dad because of it. I think I'm a better person because of it. And my life makes sense. The recurring dreams make sense. Going up to Ohio makes sense. The whole wrestling journey, now makes sense. And figuring out and understanding what I didn't know as a kid and what I know now, there's no regrets because I didn't know it. I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the opportunity to learn these things. But it's never too late, and these things are very powerful lessons that can change a person's life.
Powerful, man. And I just love hearing those stories. And the way you told it, you have such a deeper level than just losing the weight. It's the reoccurring dreams, and why did you stop wrestling when you did, and how did you come back to it? And it's just all I love how it all ties together. And I greatly appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I'm gonna post the pictures of your weight loss before and after, because I know we have to wind this down. But man, what an incredible story. I have to ask though, like when you were in in that 6-month period when you were first losing the weight, did you have any
Yeah.
doubts or any setbacks, or was it smooth sailing from June on?
No, that's the thing, man. And you know, when I finally got all the pieces of the puzzle, right? Like the stop blaming was replaced by diet and nutrition, right? Because think about it. When I was cutting weight in high school, I was sucking wind on the mat because I was cutting a massive amount of weight in a very unhealthy way. And then you think back, not a what if, like a real what if. What if I would have known how to cut weight properly? You know, the kids that knew that, they had the energy and confidence to go on the mat and not be sucking wind. Right? What do they say? The wrestling quote, everyone, as soon as you get tired, it makes a coward out of all of us, right? All those isms that are on the internet now, the wrestling memes, like, they're true. I had no mindset. I had no confidence. I had no stamina. I was missing all that. So now, in the weight room, when I put it all together, I had the whole picture finally. The question you ask can't possibly exist. Because if you put it together, you're not going to have a setback. If you're going to be an idiot and cut the wrong way, then yeah, right? If you're going to do it bad and wrong, you're going to have miserable days and setbacks. But like, wrestling is that one weird sport where you can go 159-0. How do you never lose? How is it possible to never, ever lose? Because in wrestling, if you do, I always say wrestling is real religion. The wrestlers that make it, they are a religion. You know, live your life the right way. That's Wrestling 101, right? He does all the right things. And they always say, if you do the right things, you won't lose. And that's one of the biggest lessons I learned, is that when you put it together, even at 40 at the gym losing weight, if you do the right things and live your life the right way, get a good night's sleep, get the right calories, do this, do that, you won't lose. And I literally have not had one setback in this whole time.
Let's go, baby. I'm fired up. I'm excited. And I hope this, maybe hits one or two people out there who, are struggling with some weight issues post-college life. And man.
Yeah, my message is not for the 16-year-old kid, hoping to get to the state tournament. I'm not talking to you if that's who's listening. I'm talking to the guy from the 80s, 90s, whatever, that's, working on his dad strength. And, because flow changed the world. And, again, before the internet, this was all it would all go away. But now people are reconnecting and they're on flow and they're talking and living their wrestling memories and figuring things out. And the important of the story is when you weren't the good guy, but you love the sport and it's still in you somewhere deep inside, you don't have to let it go. And you don't have to live in the past either. This is not about living in the past. It's about you went through those practices and you got it in you and it's not getting out of you. And you can use those tools for so many ways, but a lot of guys are going to get out of shape and are going to get heavy, and their kids are not out of shape and they're not heavy, and the kids want a dad that can like my son. My name is David Katz, right? So I call him Air Katz because now I'm strong enough to pick him up like he's 11 years old. I can pick him up like nothing over my head and upside down. I say Air Katz is coming, and like he loves it. But if his dad was an overweight slob on the couch, it's like, what I'm saying, what are you going to do with that? So you can be the dad with dad strength. You might not be the club coach or coaching your kid, but just having that wrestling fire in you, I think, will just make you a better dad and just a better person. And you can live out. I don't know how to say it, but you can have a resurgence at 40.
Just a better quality of life. There's no question about it. Like, forget about having
that's it.
The washboard abs or whatever.
That's it. Everyone.
Great. But
right, everyone knows like the wrestlers worked harder than everybody else in high school, right? Wrestling, MMA, like they say wrestling is superior. I'm not saying wrestling is superior, but it is like a brotherhood, a fraternity. It's something special, and it does. If you went through it, you do know what hard work is, and you do know that it pays off. And like we're saying, when you do all the things right, you win. And when you use those tools of wrestling in the physical side of your life, post 40, it can do amazing things. And my life is a testimony of that. And I'm going to keep doing it. And I got my answers. I didn't point the fingers and blame. If I would have, it would have shut the journey down. And now I view the journey as just beginning.
Awesome, man. Well, we're going to have you back on to kind of check in and see how things are going. I greatly appreciate you listening in and reaching out in the first place. And this is going to be a great episode to get out there. So thank you very much for your time today. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, and I'd like to come back. And if anybody, this message should just be for those guys to get them motivated. It doesn't have to be over, and again, not living in the past, but just live it up.
And
it's
David,
it's a
if someone
gift.
wants to reach out to get some inspiration from you, where would they do that? What's your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, that kind of thing?
So my website where I teach, because wrestling and Bible and faith go hand in hand, right?
No question.
So I bring a lot of wrestling stuff in my Bible teachings, and my website where I teach is getsoulstrong.com, GETSOULSTRONG.com. And if anyone wants to go to classes on the faith and spiritual side and have like that wrestling feel to it, that's what I do. And my goal is to tie the two together, like physicality and faith. I mean, again, wrestling 101. And it always did work, and I think it always will work, and that's what I'm here to do. And the weight loss and the resurgence in wrestling has only strengthened the spiritual vision. And again, you just watch a little bit of wrestling any time, and you see faith and wrestling go hand in hand, and that's what I live by.
And all great things must come to an end. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, give us a review, give us a rating, and share this with your friends. It would mean the world to us. Thanks for listening to Wrestling Changed My Life.